Chris, we just got some new polling information that has our two gubernatorial candidates here, Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp, neck and neck. Is that sort of reflective of what's happening across the country as we approach the midterms? It seems party bases will be important, but so will those independents.
Well, I'm not so sure about the independents. I mean, traditionally they would be, but it seems nowadays that it's all about base. You want to get more of your supporters out than the other guy or woman wants to get of their supporters out. And that's why it's interesting. I mean, it becomes a question of enthusiasm and mobilizing your base. And there is some indication that Democrats, I'm not talking about specifically in Georgia, but across the country, are more enthused in this election, not so much that they love their candidates, but they really want to turn out to make a statement against Donald Trump than Republicans are. And just looking at it historically, in midterm elections, the party of the new president in power in the first midterm tends to lose seats.
Yeah. Let's talk about Washington now, where you are. A couple of big stories once again consuming the White House, the new Bob Woodward book and this anonymous op-ed in the New York Times. Not much seems to stick to the president, but how do you see these stories playing out for the White House?
Well, you know, they're not dramatically new. I mean, this is something we've heard for some period of time, that there is disarray in the White House, that there are people who feel that the president sometimes is impetuous, lashes out, and try to channel him. To a certain degree, I think that's true of a lot of presidents. You used to hear stories about that with Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson and other presidents. But clearly there's more of it going on with this president. And the anonymous essay in the New York Times is particularly damaging because, among other things, it has fostered a parlor game here in D.C. Who is it? And there's nothing that people love. Look, we spent 40 years trying to find out who Deep Throat was, the source for Bob Woodward and the Watergate scandal. Yeah. And for all of those people to say, well, all these 30, 40 people have already said, no, it wasn't them. Deep Throat, a top FBI official named Mark Felt back in 1974, flatly denied he was Deep Throat. He was.
Well, the other drama that played out there this week was the Supreme Court hearing. There was a lot of grandstanding during the Brett Kavanaugh proceedings there, particularly among a couple of 2020 Democrat hopefuls. What was your take on their auditions, so to speak? Was that the right venue to lay it all out there?
There's no bad venue to lay it all out there. Everybody is jockeying for position and trying to get some attention. And since there was national attention to this, the news networks were broadcasting it live. And secondly, there's tremendous frustration in the Democratic base with Donald Trump. And I think most people believe that they're not going to be able to stop Kavanaugh. So they want to see who's going to put up the toughest fight. Who would put up the toughest fight against Donald Trump in a 2020 general election campaign? And the two you're talking about specifically, Kamala Harris, a new senator from California, and Cory Booker, a freshman from New Jersey. They both tried to dust up Brett Kavanaugh. I think they both dusted him up a little bit, but I didn't see anything that looked anything close to a knockout blow. My guess is that he's on his way to being a Supreme Court justice.
You always have big gets on Fox News Sunday. Who's coming up this weekend?
Well, we got a very big guest. We'll have the Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, at a time when the White House is in some disarray and they're pointing fingers at each other. And I think there's an effort to say the place isn't burning down. We're still doing business. We'll be talking to Mike Pence about all of that. We'll also talk to Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat from Delaware. He was a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we'll talk to him about, well, two things I can think of. One, whether they can block Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court, and also, as if Donald Trump didn't have enough problems, Barack Obama returned to the campaign trail today with some very tough words for President Trump. We'll ask Senator Coons about that as well.
All right. Chris Wallace, always such great information there from Washington. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Tom.